Black CEO posed as waitress to test. An arrogant billionaire, 10 minutes. Later, he begged for her help. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. You in the apron, bring me someone who actually looks like they belong here. The words snapped across the marble and brass dining room like a whip. Crystal glasses trembled. A fork clinked against porcelain. And for a second, even the piano stopped. Naomi Brooks didn't flinch. She just stood there, tray balanced on one hand, eyes calm and unreadable. The navy apron covered her charcoal blouse. Her hair was tucked into a neat bun. To everyone watching, she was just another waitress at La Maison d'Or, Manhattan's crown jewel of exclusivity. No one guessed that 10 minutes from now, the man who'd just humiliated her, Richard Hale, billionaire investor and self-proclaimed king of Wall Street, would be begging for her help. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to Naomi. She walked toward Richard's table. Every step measured, every breath steady. A few diners looked up, some amused, some uncomfortable, like they'd just witnessed something they couldn't unhear. His friends leaned back in their velvet chairs, laughing into their champagne. The scene smelled of arrogance, expensive and loud. Careful with that tray, Richard said, not even looking at her. This suit costs more than your month's rent. The men chuckled. Someone murmured classic Hale. Naomi placed the glass gently before him. Then I'll make sure it doesn't spill, she said softly. He looked up then, just long enough to notice the confidence behind her calm. Attitude doesn't suit your uniform, he muttered. A small camera over the bar captured everything, the sneer, the smirk, the power imbalance. Naomi knew it would matter later. Tonight wasn't about service. It was a test. When she'd bought Hale International through a silent acquisition last week, she'd promised herself one thing: she wouldn't announce it yet. She wanted to see how Richard treated people he thought were beneath him. Now, standing beside his table, she had her answer. And the clock on the wall began counting down the last 10 minutes of his empire. Naomi moved through the dining room like a shadow stitched into luxury. Every motion deliberate, every pause calculated. She refilled glasses, collected plates, and listened not to orders but to patterns. The way Richard snapped his fingers instead of saying please. The way his guests mirrored his arrogance like disciples echoing a sermon. At the far end of the restaurant, the maitre d' whispered to a hostess, glancing toward Naomi. She's new, he said. I didn't approve that hire. The hostess shrugged nervously. Kitchen center, she murmured. Naomi caught it all, filing details, the way she filed market reports quietly, methodically, without emotion. Richard's voice carried again. You know what's wrong with this country, he said, swirling his wine. Everyone thinks they deserve a seat at the table. Some people forget not all tables are for them. His friends laughed, the way rich men laugh when they're sure no one will ever correct them. Naomi's eyes flicked to the reflection of the chandelier in the wine glass she was polishing. It reminded her of another light, harsh fluorescent 10 years ago when she'd been mistaken for catering staff at her own investment pitch. She'd stood outside that boardroom holding a tray of coffee, listening to them discuss whether her skin matched the brand. She didn't storm out. She stayed, presented, and closed the deal. Then she bought their firm 3 years later. A soft voice pulled her back. You okay? It was Maya Torres, the youngest waitress, barely 20, clutching a tray close to her chest. Naomi nodded. I'm fine. Maya hesitated. He talks to everyone like that. Don't take it personal. Naomi smiled faintly. I never do. Across the room, a man in a navy suit was filming discreetly from his phone, a food blogger who'd recognized Richard. The red record light blinked, small but constant. Naomi noticed, then turned away as if it didn't matter. Let the truth document itself. Richard lifted his hand again. Waitress, this glass isn't chilled enough. Maybe next time tell the manager to hire people who understand premium service. Naomi stepped closer, calm as stone. I will, she said evenly, when I meet one. The table went quiet. Richard's grin stiffened, ego bruised, but still searching for control. You're funny, he said. Dangerous for someone disposable. Naomi looked him in the eye for the first time. Disposable people don't own shares in your company. He laughed, dismissive. Keep dreaming, sweetheart. She turned away, her reflection, sliding past gold mirrors and white linen, a silent storm gathering. Outside, the city glowed. Inside, arrogance burned brighter, and beneath the hum of conversation, somewhere deep in Naomi's pocket, her phone buzzed once a message from her assistant protocol, Vega, ready on your command. The restaurant hummed with a low, expensive rhythm, forks on porcelain laughter polished by entitlement. Naomi moved like still water through it all. Calm, precise, invisible. That was how she wanted it. Richard's voice kept slicing the air. You see, he said to his guests, the market rewards boldness. You want control, you take it. You don't ask permission, especially not from people who haven't earned the right to sit at your table. His tone carried past the crystal walls and caught on nearby ears. A couple at the next table glanced over. One woman frowned. Her husband whispered something like, he's talking about her. They weren't wrong. Naomi set down a plate of seared scallops, steady hands betraying nothing. Your entree, sir, Richard smirked. Finally, some use. He reached for the plate, intentionally brushing her wrist. You must be new. Try to last longer than the last one, she cried before dessert. Naomi met his gaze. Maybe she learned faster than you think. The laughter faltered. The friends shifted in their seats, unsure whether to chuckle or choke on the tension. At the corner of the bar, Maya watched shoulders, stiff phone half raised, but Naomi gave her a subtle shake of the head. Not yet. The lesson had to play out in real time. From behind the counter, the manager, Patrick Wells, approached tall and nervous. Everything all right here, mister? Hail, he asked, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Richard waved dismissively. Just training your new staff. She's got potential, but she needs to know her place. Patrick turned to Naomi, lowering his voice. Please, ma'am, just go along with it. Naomi tilted her head, studying him. You mean go along with disrespect to keep your tip Patrick's throat tightened? It's complicated. No, Naomi said softly. It's familiar. A hush rippled across the room. The food blogger's camera light blinked again, red, steady, unblinking. Then came the pivot, that quiet breaking point the world never notices until it's too late. Richard tapped his glass with a knife, calling attention like a king addressing peasants. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to the dining room, a toast to success, to power, and to knowing where you stand in life. He raised his glass toward Naomi. And to those still serving it, the words hit like a slap. A few guests looked down, embarrassed to be part of the show. Maya's breath caught. The maitre froze. Naomi didn't move. She set her tray down, gently straightened, and said, Power isn't knowing where you stand. It's knowing you don't have to prove it. For a heartbeat silence. Then a faint murmur, admiration, disbelief, the sound of perception cracking. Richard's grin thinned. Get her out of here, he snapped to Patrick. Now, Patrick hesitated. Naomi stayed still, her phone now glowing faintly in her hand. One thumb hovered above a single word on the screen. Send. Outside, sirens moaned somewhere in the city's distance. Inside, time held its breath. The first move had been made. Patrick froze, caught between money and morality. His eyes darted from Richard's scowl to Naomi's stillness. The restaurant felt heavier, as if the chandeliers themselves leaned closer to listen. Do it, Richard said sharply, voice thick with wine and entitlement. You're the manager, aren't you, Manage? Patrick swallowed. Sir, perhaps we can de-escalate. There's nothing to de-escalate, Richard barked. This waitress forgot she's paid to serve, not speak. Naomi picked up her tray, setting each glass back on it with deliberate grace. Her silence was louder than his shouting. Would you like me to leave your table? She asked evenly, or your company? The room stilled again. The blogger's camera light blinked red. One of Richard's friends shifted in his chair. Maybe chill, Rich, he muttered. It's just a server. Richard shot him a glare sharp enough to cut through crystal. You don't get it. People like her need reminders. The words landed heavy. Maya flinched. The hostess near the entry lowered her eyes, pretending to adjust menus. Every sound in the room seemed to fade except Richard's arrogance. Naomi's voice broke the silence, soft, deliberate. You talk like power is permanent. It isn't. It's leased. Richard smirked. Cute. Is that what they teach in customer service orientation? Naomi tilted her head slightly. In business acquisitions, actually. He frowned, not catching it, too busy, drowning in his own laughter. Patrick stepped closer, whispering, Please, just go to the back. I'll handle him. Naomi met his gaze and said quietly, You already did. Every time you stayed silent, a small collective breath swept through the tables, that invisible current when people realize something wrong is happening but still can't look away. Naomi turned, ready to walk away. But Richard wasn't finished. Don't you dare walk off when I'm speaking to you, he snapped, grabbing her wrist. The motion was fast, ugly, and caught squarely on camera. Glasses tipped. Maya gasped. Patrick lunged forward, pulling Richard's hand away. "Sir, please!" Richard staggered back, realizing too late how many eyes were on him. Phones rose like quiet witnesses. Naomi didn't flinch. She set the tray down, her voice steady as stone. "You just put your hands on the wrong woman," he scoffed. "What are you going to do? Tweet about it?" Naomi reached for her phone thumb, pressing a single contact. The screen flashed Lila. "Corporate Ops. Protocol Vega," she said softly. "Now." A calm reply echoed through the speaker. "Confirm. Activating internal feed. You're live across all holdings." Richard blinked, confused. "What the hell are you talking about?" Naomi's eyes met his unwavering. "About 10 minutes too late." Patrick's phone vibrated at his side. He looked down his system dashboard, now locked out, replaced by a message: Brooks Capital Holdings transition phase engaged. Outside, the night pulsed with Manhattan lights. Inside, Richard Hale had no idea that his downfall had already started the moment he touched her wrist. Every screen in the restaurant flickered. The live feed from Naomi's phone synced silently with the network above the bar, a sleek LED panel, usually looping ads for champagne and weekend brunches. Now it displayed one line in cold white text: Brooks Capital Holdings, internal audit in progress. Patrick's jaw fell open. The maitre d' whispered something sharp in French. Maya, still clutching her tray, whispered, "She's connected to them." Richard frowned, trying to piece together what he was seeing. This some kind of joke. He turned to his friends, looking for laughter, but none came. They were watching Naomi. Everyone was. Naomi didn't move. She stood centered in the room, calm, the phone still glowing in her hand like a quiet weapon. "This audit will take less than 5 minutes, she said softly. "Longer than your respect lasted, but shorter than your reign." Richard's laugh was hollow now. "You're bluffing. Brooks Capital doesn't even." He stopped mid-sentence. On the wall screen, the company logo expanded into view, followed by financial data: Hale International, his company streaming across the feed with red indicators flashing pending transition. Gasps rippled through the tables. A man near the window whispered, "That's his firm." Another muttered, "She's not bluffing." Richard stumbled a step forward. "Turn that off," he shouted at Patrick. Patrick raised both hands helplessly. I can't. The system's locked." Maya's voice, small but clear, broke the tension. She said, "Powers leased." Naomi turned her head slightly, and the payment just came due. The blogger near the bar zoomed in, capturing everything. His live stream count climbed into the thousands. Comments scrolled fast across his screen. "Is this real? She's the new owner, Justice, in real time." Richard slammed a hand on the table. "You think you can embarrass me in my own restaurant?" Naomi looked around the room, meeting every set of eyes. "You've mistaken exposure for embarrassment. They're not the same." Patrick's phone buzzed again, an alert. He read it aloud without meaning to: effective, immediately ownership restructuring. Brooks Capital now majority stakeholder of Hale International. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Maya stepped closer to Naomi, voice trembling but proud. "Ma'am, everyone just saw that." Naomi's tone softened. "Good, because justice shouldn't hide behind closed doors." Richard looked around wildly, searching for control in a room that no longer obeyed him. His own friends sat silent. The maitre d' put a hand on his shoulder, whispering, "Sir, perhaps you should sit down." He didn't. He stared at Naomi, the woman he'd mocked, dismissed, touched without consent, and finally saw what he'd missed all along. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Naomi's eyes glinted under the chandelier's light. "The woman who gave you every chance to show your character," she said. "You failed the test." Outside, a line of black cars began pulling up to the curb. Inside, the hum of justice grew louder. The witnesses had multiplied. The reckoning had begun. The restaurant no longer sounded like a place for dinner. It sounded like judgment. Forks rested mid-air. Conversations died mid-sentence. The air itself seemed to tighten around Richard Hale as his face reddened under the light. He turned toward Patrick, voice cracking with disbelief. "You knew about this. You're in on her stunt." Patrick shook his head quickly. "Sir, I swear I don't even know what's happening." Naomi spoke before he could finish. "What's happening," she said evenly, "is accountability." The word dropped like a stone into still water, sending ripples across every table. Richard laughed bitterly, too loud, too desperate. "You expect anyone here to believe you own my company?" Naomi raised an eyebrow. "No," she said, "I expect you to read the ticker." As if on cue, the wall screen changed again. A financial network feed appeared. "Breaking: Brooks Capital Holdings finalizes acquisition of Hale International in surprise early transition." The headline scrolled, "Date stamped today. 7:46 p.m. A collective gasp. Someone clapped once instinctively before realizing where they were. Maya's eyes widened. Patrick stepped back from the table like it was on fire. Richard's voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. That's impossible. That deal wasn't supposed to close until next quarter. Naomi finished for him. It closed early. The board agreed after reviewing your public behavior. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The footage from the past 15 minutes, every insult, every gesture was now streaming on the restaurant's own security network, mirrored by the silent corporate feed Naomi had activated. One by one, employees and diners began to see what had just unfolded. It wasn't gossip anymore. It was evidence. Naomi took a slow step closer. I wanted to see if what I'd read was true, she said. That the man running Hale International had built a brand on intimidation. I hoped they were wrong. Richard's jaw tightened. You can't just walk in here, and I didn't walk in, she interrupted. I own the door. The phrase landed like thunder. Even the bartender froze mid-pour. From the far side of the dining room, Maya spoke again, trembling but loud enough for all to hear. You can't treat people like that and expect no one to notice anymore. Richard turned on her face, twisted. Stay out of this. Naomi's voice sharpened. She's already in this. You put her in it when you made humiliation part of your service model. He glared at Naomi. You think you've won because of a few numbers on a screen? No, she said quietly. Because of what those numbers mean. Ownership, Richard. The thing you thought only looked one way. Silence stretched long and heavy. Then the maitre d' cleared his throat. Madam, he said, voice, careful, would you like the private room prepared? Naomi smiled faintly. No need. The truth doesn't need privacy. The screen flickered again, this time displaying a live statement from Brooks Capital's board confirming her position. Richard's knees nearly buckled. His empire had just evaporated in real time, right before a room full of witnesses with cameras rolling. Naomi set her phone down on the table between them. You once said some people forget. Not all tables are for them, she said softly. You were right. This one never was. For a heartbeat, the room was pure silence, not the elegant kind found in luxury, but the kind that hums before a storm breaks. Richard's hand trembled as he reached for his drink, knocking it over instead. Wine spilled across the white tablecloth, seeping like guilt. Naomi didn't move. She just watched him calm and centered. Around them, cameras glowed in the hands of guests who had stopped pretending not to record. Every eye had turned witness. Richard slammed his palm on the table. Enough, he barked. You think this little spectacle scares me? I built an empire before you were out of school. Naomi tilted her head. And yet here you are yelling at a woman you thought was your waitress. His breath hitched. Pride was a fragile thing when cornered. He tried to stand taller, louder. You don't belong in my world. Naomi's reply came soft, almost tender. I didn't. I made my own. That sentence broke something in him. His control slipped. His voice rose. You're nothing without this performance, just another activist trying to shame success. The room's temperature shifted. Maya lowered her tray. Patrick stared at the floor. The blogger's stream crossed 20,000 viewers. Naomi didn't blink. You mistake success for supremacy, she said. I don't need to shame you. You did that yourself. He leaned forward, veins showing on his neck. You don't get to lecture me in my city. Her tone stayed even. You lost this city the moment it started watching. For the first time, he noticed how many phones were pointed his way. Dozens. His reflection shimmered on every black screen, the villain in a story he never thought he'd star in. Desperation turned his arrogance into venom. You think you can destroy me, he spat. I'll ruin you before the night ends. Naomi took a slow step closer. The distance between them shrank until only truth stood in the air between. You already tried, she said. Every time you spoke over someone, every time you decided dignity had a dress code. Richard's laugh broke halfway through. You're bluffing about that deal. I still have control. Naomi gestured toward the wall screen. It now displayed his company's board statement, effective immediately. Richard Hale removed as acting chairman. His voice cracked. They can't. They already did, she said. They were watching too. The realization drained the color from his face. He turned to Patrick as if seeking rescue, but the manager took a half step back. No one in that room would save him now. Naomi looked toward the staff. Go ahead and serve dessert, she said quietly. Some lessons taste better after the bitterness. The maitre d' nodded slowly, unsure whether to obey or applaud. Richard stood there, trembling, chest rising fast. You'll regret this, he hissed. Naomi picked up his fallen glass, set it upright, and said, regret is what built me. Respect is what rebuilds you if you're lucky enough to learn. Behind her, the screen flickered again, shifting from numbers to names. Richard Hale, access suspended. It was official now. The man who once believed he owned the room had just been escorted out of it by the truth itself. The crimson wine stain spread across the linen like a map of collapse. Richard stared at it as if the color could somehow rearrange itself into control. But control had left the room quietly, completely. Naomi stood opposite him, composed as marble. Around them, the murmurs of diners grew into a low collective breath. Nobody was eating anymore. They were witnessing something larger than dinner, the undoing of arrogance. Richard's voice, once booming with confidence, shrank to a hoarse plea. "You can't just walk in here and humiliate me." Naomi's gaze didn't soften. "You did that yourself. I'm just holding up the mirror." He laughed, brittle, defensive. "You think people care about some corporate shuffle? Tomorrow the news cycle moves on." Naomi took a single step forward. "Maybe. But the people you ignored, the ones you silenced, they won't move on. They'll remember you exactly like this, surrounded by witnesses who finally stopped pretending they didn't see." Her words hit him harder than the headlines ever could. He looked around the room, the waitstaff, the diners, Maya, Patrick, the blogger, still streaming. Every face reflected a truth he couldn't buy back. The maitre cleared his throat. "Sir, would you like your bill settled before you go?" A ripple of awkward laughter slid through the room. Naomi didn't smile, but her silence allowed it to breathe. Richard's eyes burned. "You're enjoying this." Naomi shook her head slowly. "I don't enjoy destruction. I just don't protect it anymore." Her phone buzzed a message from Lila security and media representatives outside. "Proceed." Naomi glanced at it, then at Richard. "You can walk out quietly," she said, "or you can wait 10 more minutes and let the world watch your exit. Either way, it ends tonight." For a moment, he said nothing. Then came the outburst, desperate, sharp, the last gasp of a man drowning in pride. "You think I'll beg? I don't beg." Naomi's tone was soft but final. "You will. But not for money, for relevance." He froze. The sentence hit like a verdict. From the corner, Maya whispered to Patrick. "She's not angry, she's done." Patrick nodded faintly. "That's worse." Richard's chest heaved as he pointed at Naomi. "You can't erase me." She leaned in just enough to make him listen. "History doesn't erase people like you, Richard. It files them under warnings." The tension cracked like thunder. A few guests clapped quietly at first, then louder like they were exhaling justice itself. Naomi didn't acknowledge the applause. She simply turned to Maya. "Can you hand me the manager's clipboard?" Maya passed it without hesitation. Naomi signed something at the top, a single deliberate stroke, then set it on the table in front of Richard. "Your severance package," she said. "Effective immediately. Consider it mercy." He stared at the document, speechless. Around him, the sound of phones clicking filled the air, evidence sealing itself. Naomi looked toward the door where security waited, then back at him. "Power isn't about how loud you speak," she said quietly. "It's about what stays true when everyone else goes silent." And the room once owned by his voice went perfectly silent. Outside, flashes of light flickered through the restaurant's front glass camera crews, journalists, onlookers gathering after the story hit social media. Inside, the air shimmered with that rare electric stillness right before a legacy collapses. Richard's breathing was shallow. "You set this up," he muttered, voice trembling. "You planned all of it." Naomi looked at him calm and deliberate. "No, Richard, you did. I just gave your character a microphone." He took a step forward, anger breaking through fear. "You tricked me into this humiliation." "I didn't trick you," she replied evenly. "I gave you a chance to show who you are when you think no one's watching. You chose the truth." The wall screen behind her glowed brighter. Now, it showed live footage from Brooks' Capitol headquarters, the board seated in a glass-walled conference room. The chairwoman, Lila, appeared on screen. "Miss Brooks," she said, her voice clear through the restaurant speakers, "the transition has been finalized. Hale International is now fully integrated, awaiting your directive." Richard turned toward the display, disbelief written all over him. You don't have that authority." Naomi faced him fully. "I do now. As of 7:48, I became majority owner and acting CEO." The words hung in the air like thunder trapped in velvet. Even Patrick, who had tried to stay invisible, whispered, "She owns him." Naomi tapped her phone. "Lila, please confirm personnel changes." Lila nodded. "Effective immediately. Richard Hale position terminated. Accounts frozen. Access revoked." The LED screen shifted again, displaying his name and a single red stamp, terminated. Richard staggered backward, knocking over a chair. His voice broke between disbelief and desperation. "You can't destroy me like this. I built that company from the ground up." Naomi's eyes didn't waver. and I built mine from the ground below it. The difference is I remember who works there." Maya stood frozen tray clutched to her chest. She whispered, "It's really happening." Naomi gave her a small nod. It always happens when people stop pretending power means value. Richard's friends had quietly pushed back their chairs, pretending to check their phones, pretending not to know him. Isolation came faster than shame. Naomi, Richard said suddenly, almost pleading now, "Look, we can fix this. I'll apologize, issue a statement, donate whatever you want." Her expression didn't change. "I don't want an apology. I want a precedent." He blinked, lost. What a moment that reminds every boardroom, every back table, every voice that thinks they can mock someone and still expect obedience that those days are over. Lila's voice returned crisp and final. "Orders received, Miss Brooks. Transition complete." Naomi exhaled, slow and certain. "Thank you." Then she looked back at Richard, her tone softening only slightly. "You once said not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Tonight I'm clearing it." And with that, she pressed one button on her phone. The restaurant lights dimmed for a second, a quiet signal. The security staff stepped forward, respectful but firm. Richard's voice cracked into the silence. "Naomi, please." For the first time, she almost pitied him. Almost. "You begged for my attention," she said quietly. "Now you have it." The cameras outside flashed brighter. The world was about to know everything. The door to La Maison d'Or swung open, letting in the cold New York air and the first glimpse of flashing press lights. Richard Hale froze as security moved closer, not touching him yet, but creating a silent border that no arrogance could cross. He looked smaller now, the confidence drained from his posture. His once perfect tie hung loose, his breath uneven. Around him, guests whispered not in awe anymore, but in disbelief. "Is that him?" someone murmured. The billionaire who just lost everything. Naomi stood, steady, framed by the chandelier's glow. The phone in her hand buzzed, notifications pouring in, news alerts, stock updates, live comments flooding across social media. In less than 10 minutes, Richard's empire had turned into a cautionary tale trending worldwide. He tried to rally his voice, but it cracked under the weight of his own downfall. "You think this makes you powerful. You think embarrassing me changes anything." Naomi's tone was calm, surgical. "It doesn't change you, Richard. It reveals you. Power doesn't corrupt, it unmasks." He swallowed, hard eyes darting to the exit where cameras waited. "You can't let them see me like this." "I didn't call them," Naomi replied. "You did every time you opened your mouth." The maitre d' approached timidly. "Madam Brooks, the press, is requesting a statement." Naomi nodded slightly. "They'll get one soon enough." Richard's hands shook as he gathered his coat, his movements jerky, desperate. "You don't understand," he muttered. "My investors, my partners, they already know," Naomi interrupted. "They're watching this live." He froze. Outside, another round of camera flashes lit the windows. His reflection flickered across the glass, once commanding, now cornered. Naomi turned to Maya. "Would you please bring the folder from the front desk?" Maya hurried, handed it to her. Naomi opened it, removed a document embossed in silver. "Richard Hale," she read aloud. "Effective immediately. All positions and holdings under your name are frozen pending review. You are to vacate all corporate properties by midnight." Richard's eyes darted between the paper and her face. You can't, I just did." He laughed then, not from humor but disbelief. "This isn't justice. It's vengeance." Naomi's gaze stayed level. "No, vengeance is loud. This is accountability, and it's quiet on purpose." Patrick, still standing near the bar, exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Maya whispered, "She's ending him." Naomi corrected her gently. "I'm ending what he represents." Richard's voice broke one last time. "What do you want from me?" Naomi met his eyes. "For you to listen." And then, in the kind of silence that rewrites a room, she said, "You told me not everyone deserves a seat at your table. I built a bigger one." The words rippled through the restaurant like music, slow, certain, undeniable. Outside, the cameras flashed faster. Inside, Richard's knees weakened. He clutched the edge of the table, his table, to keep from falling. But the table no longer belonged to him. Security stood by the door, now patient but unmoving. They didn't drag Richard out, they waited the way justice waits for dignity to catch up. The entire restaurant had gone still, every diner aware they were part of a moment people would replay for years. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her calm had gravity. "You have two choices," she said. "You can walk out of here quietly, or you can let the world watch the man who couldn't control his own temper be escorted out of a restaurant he doesn't own." Richard's throat tightened. "You think I care what they think?" She met his eyes. "You care about control. and right now you have none." He turned desperate to Patrick. "You work for me, don't just stand there, Patrick." Cut him off. "No, sir. I work for her now." The words came out trembling but proud, like something that had waited years to be said. A soft gasp rolled through the room. Richard's lips parted, searching for the power he'd lost mid-sentence. Naomi stepped closer. "You see, Richard, loyalty isn't owned. It's earned. You spent a career buying obedience. I built mine through trust." The blogger near the bar whispered into his live stream, "She's teaching him more in 10 minutes than life ever did." Naomi turned toward Maya. "Is the system audit complete?" Maya checked her phone, nodded. "Yes, ma'am. All transfers logged and verified." Naomi looked back at Richard. "Then there's nothing left for you to lose except a little humility." He sneered, though his voice shook. "You think you've won?" Naomi folded her arms. Winning was never the goal. Correction was. For the first time, he looked truly afraid, not of her, but of himself. The reflection in the glass wall showed a man stripped of image, stripped of armor. "You're going to destroy everything I built," he said quietly. "No," Naomi replied. "You did that the moment you stopped seeing people as people." A murmur of agreement rippled through the diners. One woman whispered, "About time someone said it." Another quietly recorded tears in her eyes. Naomi took a breath, steady and final. "Lila," she said into her phone, "lock his executive credentials." A calm voice answered through the speaker, confirmed. "All accounts terminated. Access revoked." Richard's watch buzzed, then went dark. His phone flashed one last notification, access denied. He looked up, eyes wide. "You can't just erase me." Naomi's tone softened, almost compassionate. "No one erased you. You just stopped mattering." Silence again, heavier, absolute. Even the chandeliers seemed to stop shimmering. Naomi turned to Patrick. "Escort Mr. Hale out. Make sure the press treats him with respect. Dignity is a debt everyone deserves, even when they've forgotten what it means." Patrick nodded, signaling the guards. Richard looked around one last time at the faces that once feared him, now indifferent. He whispered, "You'll regret this." Naomi shook her head gently. "Regret belongs to those who lost themselves chasing power. I found myself by taking it back." And with that, she stepped aside. The former king of the room walked past her, humbled, swallowed by the quiet thunder of justice. The door closed behind Richard Hale with a hush that felt like a full stop. Outside, camera flashes swallowed him whole. Inside, the restaurant slowly exhaled, waiters stepping out from the kitchen, diners murmuring like a tide returning to shore. The music that had stopped mid-symphony resumed softly, almost as if it understood the tone had changed forever. Naomi remained still for a moment, letting the silence breathe. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Lila, transition complete. Press waiting for a statement. "Congratulations." She typed back 2 words. Not celebration. Correction. Patrick approached cautiously. "Miss Brooks." "I don't know what to say." Naomi smiled faintly. "Then say nothing. Just run this place the way it should have been run, with respect." He nodded, eyes glistening. Maya came forward next, still holding her tray. "Ma'am," she said, voice trembling with emotion, I've never seen anyone handle something like that without raising their voice." Naomi turned toward her. "You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to stand where truth echoes loud enough." The young waitress nodded, a small, proud smile breaking through the shock. Naomi glanced around the room, the same chandeliers, the same tables, but the air was different now. Justice had rewired it. "Everyone," she said softly, addressing the staff and the diners alike, "you can go back to your meals. The lesson's over." No one moved immediately. They just watched her. Some clapped quietly, hesitant at first, then louder, sincere. One man stood and said, "About time someone like him got humbled." Naomi didn't respond. She only said, "Let's not enjoy the fall. Let's remember why it happened." As she turned to leave, Maya called after her, "Will we see you again?" Naomi paused at the door, glancing over her shoulder. "You already have. Every time someone stands up for their dignity, you'll see me." Outside, the cold air wrapped around her like closure. Across the street, reporters swarmed, microphones raised. She didn't stop. She didn't need to. The story was already writing itself in real time, a modern parable dressed as business news. Her car waited at the curb engine, humming low. She stepped in, took one last look at the restaurant, the same place that had tried to shrink her an hour ago. Now it stood under her name, her rules, her silence. The driver asked back to headquarters. Miss Brooks. Naomi watched the crowd across the glass, the glow of screens reflecting in her eyes. "No," she said softly. "Back to the foundation. We've got scholarships to fund." The car pulled away. Behind her, La Maison d'Or glimmered in the night, still gold, still perfect, but finally honest, and her voice, low, certain, steady, lingered like the final line of a sermon. Power isn't the ability to silence others. It's the strength to stay silent when you've already won. Fade out.